Hello and welcome to Blender 101 live online class for Saturday, today's the 17th. It's St. Patrick's Day. And today we are going to be taking a look at the process of texturing your character. Now, for those of you who actually are paying attention to this live, I do apologize for the brief technical difficulties we had at the very beginning of the broadcast, but it looks like everybody who is here, pretty much, has managed to make it back in, which is, of course, most excellent. And there's Gav, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him in as an organizer real quick, if you guys will bear with me for just a second while I do that. Alright, so the first thing I want to do as a part of the class is just make a couple of quick announcements. I have taken a look at most of the homework that has come in. If it has come in the last day to day and a half, I haven't had a chance to grab it and download it yet, so please give me some time on that. I have had some questions about the grading of the homework. There is not going to be a grade per se, okay? I'm not going to be giving you guys like an A or an F or a 100% or a 50% or anything like that. The big thing I'm looking for is, are you able to follow along with what I'm doing? And really what I'm looking for is just a satisfactory degree of being able to match what I had on the screen. If you are really lacking, or if I see something that looks like it has problems, I will probably end up talking to you about it. But really, so far, for the most part, everything has been okay. The only catches I have seen, and it's one of those things where I thought about contacting some folks, but it will have to come out in the wash. It's the nature of things. Is several of you who turned in your homework assignments where I asked you to get your animatic set up and get your camera in place, we're in fact pointing your camera at the ground, or you just left it in its default position. Some of you didn't actually move your camera. Please understand, remember that in Blender, the view that you look through in your viewport and the camera are two entirely different things. And they don't necessarily go together all at the same time, like they would in Maya. Like in Maya, if you point your view at something, you can actually hit render if you want, and you'll always see that view. In Blender, that's not the case. So please make sure you pay attention to where your camera is pointed, and the hotkey for sending it to whatever you're looking at in the view is Control-Alt-0. Now, before we really get rolling, I wanted to ask real quick, were there any questions that I can address early on? So if you've got any questions about stuff at this point, we did have an open Q&A session, and it did go pretty well. There weren't a great deal of people who really showed up for it, but you know, I just took that as kind of an affirmation that what we're doing right now is fairly straightforward, and that it hasn't been a really big deal to follow along with any of that, which is good. That's actually what I want to see. Now, hopefully, let's see, I'm kind of tweaking my audio a little bit on the actual recording. So there we go. That's a little more close to what I'm used to seeing there. So I'm taking it there are no questions, and we should go ahead and get started. So let me move some things around here. By the way, I kind of hate this whole flicking thing where you can slide stuff around. Gavin, did you make it back in? You can just go ahead and give me a quick heads up for here.
I did, and I was just updating Firefox so that Blender, the BuzzNet will work.
Oh, okay, good.
So that should be working now. Cool.
All right, cool. Well, let me go ahead and just mark off a clear area over here and get my brush back out. Today, we are taking a look at the process of surfacing. Now, surfacing is a term you may not have heard too many times. Really, it's just a combination of texturing and setup of materials. So those are our two big things. But in this process, there are some things we need to do with our model. Somebody said, what was the command tool for finding overlapping geometry? Finding it, I just go into face mode, and I see if I've got some extra faces kind of sitting on edges, or grab a vertex and pull it away. And if please make sure that you're not using proportional editing mode when you do that. But if you move a vertex and it looks like another vertex is remaining behind in that location, then you can just use remove doubles, and that should take care of it for you. And Sabine asks, I'm sorry, yeah. How bad is it if I didn't send in one of my assignments? Oh, well, that means you probably won't get your certificate at the end of the class, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, I'm not going to throw you out or anything. You're welcome to stay. And then the other one, how do I delete the animation icon in the outliner? We'll get to all of the animation stuff a little bit later on. For now, we're going to keep things stuck with what we're actually looking at right now. Okay, so let's move on from here. So today, specifically, what we've got on the docket, and it's actually going to be a little bit of a, it's going to be a procedure. We're going to have to do a lot of pretty quick work. I'm not going to go too fast for you, and I will be taking questions along the way, but there is simply a lot to cover. And if you're having a very difficult time following along, I do encourage you to consider checking out the live recording of the class a little bit later. I think it will make your life a lot simpler with everything we've got to accomplish today. So speaking of which, what are we trying to accomplish today? Well, we have to handle UVs. I'm going to show you guys how to lay out the UVs for your character. We are going to take a look at texturing using those UVs. Actually, you know what? Before we even do this, let me make my eraser a little bit bigger. We are going to take a look at texture baking. I guess I could have left that, but I was just going to say baking, and then I changed my mind. Then we're going to take a look at painting textures. And then finally, we're going to take a look at setting up our material. And this is going to make use of nodes. Actually, I have a pretty cool material that we're going to be going over, which allows us to not only utilize ambient occlusion, but to tint the ambient occlusion for any bounced light in the scene. We're going to be faking that. We're not actually going to be calculating bounced light. We're going to do a rendering trick, which is cool because it saves you a lot of render time. And if you're doing something like a game engine anyway, dynamic characters don't get to have bounced light actually hit them anyway. So if you ever could fake that for a relatively static scene, at least you'll know a way to get that started. So give me just a moment, folks. And thank you. I had to take a quick drink because let me tell you, I've already done a lot of talking. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off inside of Blender. I'm not seeing any additional questions right at the moment, and that's good. So hopefully at this point you've got something vaguely like this scene. You've got your hill, you've got your backdrop, you have a golf club of some sort, you have a golf ball of some sort, and didn't mean to hit the 0 key. Did any of you out there get to watch the video I put up yesterday over how to do a different golf ball? I'm just curious, did any of you get to actually see that? Oh, good. So at least a few of you did see that. I put that up in the Member Sponsor Lounge. It's a good idea when you're taking part in these classes especially to please keep an eye on the Member Sponsor Lounge for announcements. It's not a critical thing. It's totally just a little addendum. I think the whole thing is maybe 7 minutes long. But I just came up with a different way to model out a golf ball and thought I would go ahead and make a quick video over how to do it. So that's available, and you can see it over in the lounge. But yeah, it's not a problem if you haven't seen it. It doesn't change anything that we're doing. So during the texturing process today, I do want to give everybody a heads up. I will just be focused on laying out and creating the textures and so forth for the character itself. Trust me, there's going to be plenty of time. We're going to actually be pushing our time to get just that done. And then once you can manage that, once you master all of that, you'll have everything you need to create a very simple texture for your golf club, which you'll find once you've got the character is actually very easy. And I'm thinking the golf ball could probably just get a material. It probably doesn't need its own individual texture, not for the range we're going to be seeing it anyway. The same is true of the golf tee. As for the backdrop and the ground, I'm going to say this now. I'm going to try to repeat myself later, but if you see folks who are curious about this in the forums, please be sure to remind them as well. I am not at all worried about texturing these at the moment. We have a single backdrop we're going to be dropping onto the backdrop. It's already done. It's a texture I'll be supplying to you, and I'm not going to worry about that until we get closer to render time. As for the ground, it's going to be black. The way we set up our grass surface that looks all cool and all that, it's just going to be using black, so we don't have to worry about that really at all. Now, a couple of other things. Oh, and also, guys, somebody just said, oh, I put the backdrop in the wrong place. If it needs to be in the spot you put it. Wolf Knightley, there's an interesting thing about that, and I don't even have my camera set up. If you have set your camera up using your animatics, let's say you wanted your camera to be right about here. And of course, I would probably want to pull it back a little bit so I could see a little more of what's going on. So let's say I wanted my camera here, then my backdrop is in the wrong place too. I'm just showing that I have a backdrop in the scene. It's probably the easiest model that you had to make the whole time, because really it's just a scaled up plane. And it can stay square. It doesn't need to be a half dome. It doesn't need to be a rectangle. Just leave it as a square, because the texture that I'm going to give you is square anyway. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started talking about UVs. And somebody just asked, probably a question you already answered, ran late because of daylight savings, BuzzNet not in use tonight. You know, actually, we ran late a little bit too, and it was because of probably user error, let's be honest. BuzzNet is in use tonight, and you can find it at buzznet.3dbuzz.com. It is a web app these days. Please.
Yeah, a few people, sorry, I was just going to say a few people are probably having the same problem I did, which is that the old version that you downloaded and launched isn't
it's not
usable
working
anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was all I could really do was wait for the webinar to start and then make an announcement of that. But yes, you can go over to buzznet.3dbuzz.com, log in with your 3dbuzz credentials. You should see the Blender class, join it, click participate, and you should be here ready to go. If you are following along as I work, I would ask that you please check participate. It should be up at the top of your interface. If you're not, if you're just kind of viewing and enjoying the scenery, so to speak, that's fine. You don't need to participate. But I'll be using that to keep track of who's ready, who needs a moment, and all that jazz. So thank you for your understanding there. Now, let me squirrel around a couple more panels here. Okay, everything looking pretty good. And let's start off just by talking about UVs. Now, I do want to mention off to the side, just as a reminder, yes, we will be using the GIMP today for the texturing process. But for the purposes of my whiteboard, which, yes, I know the whiteboard is blue. Please don't remind me. We're going to use Photoshop just because I'm so used to using this in this manner. So let's start off just with UVs. Now, is anybody in here, and you can respond in BuzzNet if you like, is anybody in here ever have any familiarity with the concept of UVs whatsoever? Just say yes or no. If you don't, please say no as well. All right, so I got some tiny bits, a few yeses, a few nos, a little. Well, the cool thing about UVs, and one of the things that actually is the most confusing about them, is that UVs are a separate coordinate space for your vertices. Your vertices for your model, as far as you know, exist in 3D space. Now I'm going to do, again, probably, you saw me do this, I think, last week. I'm going to draw like the most amazing box you've ever seen, right? So we got some vertices, we got some edges connecting them, and I'll let you guys imagine that we have some faces there as well. And you guys are totally cool with the concept that these vertices have a position in 3D space. And that would be an X, Y, and Z. Well, UVs are a second coordinate for those vertices defined in texture space. Texture space is generally two-dimensional. Okay, there's actually a 3D element to certain textures, but we're not really going to stress that right now. This 2D space is defined not by X, Y, and Z, but by U and V. Now, U and V are arbitrary directions where in 3D space you can pretty much always guarantee, at least when you're staying in the same application anyway, that X is going to run one way, Y is going to run another way, and Z is going to run the third way. U and V are technically a little bit arbitrary. You can't look at a model and know which way U and V are going to run, but when you're actually looking at the UV grid, which we'll take a look at inside of Blender, U is going to run horizontally and V is going to run vertically. And you'll have this grid. Now, this texture space is its own thing. It's completely separate from the 3D view. And let me actually open Blender back up. We can take a look at it, actually. What I'm going to do is split off my view. Now, I'm not animating today, so let me go ahead and get rid of my timeline, and it'll just save us a little bit of space. And I'm going to squeeze my properties window out of the way just a little bit, and I'm going to split this guy in half. And the view over on the left-hand side, also, let me turn on my screencast, because I realize folks seem to really appreciate that when I do that. So let me jump over to my add-ons and make sure that those are on, which they weren't. And over in my toolbox, I'll just make sure that those are playing for everybody. Okay, so now let's set this over to a UV image editor. And this is your texture grid right here. This is exactly what I was talking about, with U running in the horizontal direction and V running in the vertical direction. Now currently you can't see the UVs of your object, whatever you have selected in the view. If you'd like to see those UVs, just simply go into edit mode and select everything. Now currently I haven't yet created any UVs here, and I have a couple of textures already loaded in here. Now I don't want you to worry about not having those. It's perfectly fine if you don't have them. But I'm just going to open up a texture just so that you can see this is what our UVs look like right now. This is every single individual face for my model stretched out completely across my entire UV grid. That's a little problematic, and that's exactly what you have to solve when you lay out your UVs. But let's get away from this. I mean, really, the big thing I want to get across here is that your UVs, as you edit them, you will find inside the UV image editor. We're going to be doing a little bit of work in here today. So it would be a good time for you to go ahead and split up your interface into something similar than I have here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. If you're comfortable doing things a little bit differently, by all means, do that. Now, that grid that we just saw has coordinates that run from 0 in the lower left corner to 1 as you branch out along each one of the two axes. That's not something you're going to run into a great deal today, the way we're going to work, but it is important to know as you move forward, especially if you start playing with game engines and whatnot, because your texture, whatever you create inside of your texture, is automatically going to fit within this grid. Now, for those of you who are totally new to the concept of UVs, you're probably asking one great big giant question, and that is, why? Why would you have UVs in the first place? What makes you think that you really need them? What in the world are they going to be there for? The big deal with UVs is that they are there to take a 3D model and flatten it out. In the case of this cube, we have a three-dimensional shape. But if we want to take this over into a 2D application such as GIMP or Photoshop, and yes, I know Photoshop Extended has some 3D features, but we're ignoring that right now. We need to be able to take this 3D shape and redefine it as a two-dimensional one. So if you can picture a 3D cube laid out flat, it's going to look something like this. And this is actually one way it could look. It could look in a lot of different ways, truth be told. And if you take I mean, you may have even seen this kind of example before, but the idea is that we've just taken a cube and we've cut some seams into it. So basically the entire border area here would just be a bunch of seams. And then we unfolded it into a flat surface. The cool thing about this being flat is that this can be taken over into a 2D image editing software, and we could paint right on it. So we could load this up inside of the GIMP or Photoshop. We could paint some sort of really amazing texture onto the flat representation of our cube. And if we loaded that texture back into our 3D application, we would end up with a texture right there where we said it should be. Now, does that make sense to everybody so far? It's a really simplified way to look at this. But just, I'm also trying to make sure that feedback is still come along. Are there any questions up to this point? I'm also going to ask that everybody who is in BuzzNet right now, please switch from not ready over to ready, just so I see a whole bunch of greens for now. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, there is one constant battle you're going to be fighting in laying out your UVs, and it's something that you have to do. In fact, a lot of folks will, laying out the UVs, this actual portion of the work, it's one of those things that kind of gets passed back and forth. Some people swear that it's the job of the texture artist, and other people insist that it's the job of the modeler. in my opinion, if you're a responsible modeler, you know how to lay out the UVs for your models, and you should be totally comfortable and ready to do that. You are the one who should be slinging those vertices around, and really, it's the same thing. You're just, in a way, you're just modeling in 2D space. But there's a really critical concept behind the idea of UVs. And just really quick, I'm going to say this one more time. Those of you out there who have not yet set your status over in BuzzNet to ready, please do so, because it will make things a lot easier later. If you are not planning on switching your status when I ask you to, please stop participating. Just click on the participate button and just go back to non-participating, because I'm going to be using that for ready checks throughout the class. Now, somebody did just pop in a question. Said, if you add a plane while looking through the camera, will it be perpendicular to the camera? And I don't believe it will. No, it shouldn't be. That's something that Max will do and Maya will do. And somebody also asked, I seem to have a rectangular UV grid. Should we also have our character all joined together at this point? Don't worry about a rectangular UV grid at this point. It's a little early. And you can have your character all joined together. I will probably, if it is, I'm probably going to be breaking mine apart, because it does make certain operations that I'll be performing a little easier, but it's not critical. We could just as easily use the local view if we absolutely had to. And then another one is, do I need to apply all of my modifiers? Right now in edit mode, only half my model is selected. Thank you. I would at least apply your mirror modifier. You do not have to apply your smooth if you don't want to. I'm not going to be applying my smooth. For the entire project, I'm going to try to just leave that smooth modifier in place. And let's see, and Gav is disappearing for 10 to 15 minutes, probably running down to the shop to get something for his mom. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, now back over to UVs for just a moment. There is a critical war in the world of UVs you're always going to be fighting, and that is the war of distortion versus seams. You're always going to have to deal with this. And this is one of those areas where those of you who are maybe a little obsessive-compulsive are always going to struggle a little bit with UVs. And you're going to have to just kind of relax a little bit, because there are some 3D objects which just can't be nicely laid out into 3D space. I'm sorry, into 2D space. You can't take a 3D object and flatten it out in 2D and not get some level of distortion. And we've seen it before. In fact, all of you are probably familiar with the most famous example of this problem, and that's with the world map. So I think most of you have seen, and probably all of you, have seen this version of the world map where you've got, let's see, we've got Africa, and we've got Europe and Asia over here, and then we've got North America, and then there's South America down here. And then you always end up with the same little interesting problem, and that is that Antarctica is usually just huge, and then Greenland is huge. It's like this massive thing up here at the top. Like, Greenland is like the world's biggest landmass that's ever been. Not Europe-centered. No, it's just a random example of a map. If you can look up the Mercator projection, and you'll see this. Now, the problem with this map is that you end up with distortion the further away you get from the equator. Everything is pretty much nice and happy at the equator, but as you get away from this, things start to get pretty heavily distorted, which is why Greenland looks so strangely massive, and Antarctica is actually bigger than it should be. Now, there is another version of the map that you may have seen as well, which I'm not going to be able to draw a really nice representation of this off the top of my head, but it almost looks, and that looks more like the letter M than anything else, it looks like an orange has been cut up and flattened out. And that is more accurate if you look at the countries that are laid out inside this map, but you end up with all these funny unsightly seams. And it just doesn't, it's not the most natural, not the easiest map in the world to read. But it's another way to approach the problem. And it just goes to underline this issue that you're going to have the whole time you're working with UVs. It's just a question of how many seams are you willing to have versus how much distortion are you willing to allow. Now today, we are not going to stress the problem of distortion very much. Our textures are going to be very simple, and we're going to cheat a little bit because we're going to be doing some texture baking. Baking is often a nice way to get around the problem of distortion because your 3D application, in this case Blender, is going to do a great job of positioning, yes, texture bacon, is going to do a good job of positioning the pixels of your texture such that you get the least amount of distortion given your current layout. So, with all of this in mind, and I realize there may be some questions, but at this point I don't want you to stress too much about it because what we're going to do is just start actually laying out some UVs, and things should hopefully become more clear as we go. Now back over here, laying out the UVs for our character is going to be a much easier task if it is not joined together. Now that said, you can see that my character is in fact all joined together. So what I'm going to do is fix that. I'm going to grab, starting with the sphere, and I'm just going to hit Control L, and I'll hit P and separate by selection. So that kind of creates its own little thing. And I'm going to do this with everything. So Control L, P, separate by selection, Control L, P, and so on. So if you're following along, it'd be a good time to go ahead and just do this real quick. Don't worry, we can put it all back together later. Now there is a way to blast everything apart. We could just select all and hit P and just say by loose parts, and that will just separate everything. So just so you know. Now everything should be its own piece. This is going to make certain tasks that we're going to perform a bit easier. I will just kind of throw this out there. The eyes, because you notice we have all these separate pieces for the eyes, these are going to be a little bit on the repetitive side. So what I'm going to do to make my life easy here is I'm actually going to delete out one side of the eyes, because I'll just lay out the UVs for one side and then I'll mirror them over. Actually, you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm actually do it both ways just so we get a little bit of extra practice, because once you get the pattern for this down, it's very, very fast. Okay, something else. Sorry to change my mind, but sometimes that's what happens. We're going to lay things out one piece at a time, and currently we still have our smooth modifier. Now I'm just going to kill off my smooth modifiers. I'm not actually going to try to lay out the UVs with those in place. It's just a lot more detail than I really want to have to work with. But you can, and the method by which we're going to be creating all of our seams and laying out our UVs would actually lend itself fairly well to having a great many parts. So if you feel the urge to just go ahead and apply those, that's fine. But I'm going to be nuking all of mine out, which I probably should have done before I exploded the model, but you know. Alright, so now everything is all nice and blocky and chunky. Now, what we're going to do is just start off with the main body of our character. This will be the first thing we lay out UVs for. Now, laying out UVs actually requires me to jump over and take a couple more notes. Here's the good news. All of this stuff sounds really technical, and it might sound a little bit scary if you've never seen it before. But here's the part that should make you happy. That laying out UVs in Blender, it's easy. It's very easy. In fact, it's so easy that I would probably, if left to my own devices, and if I didn't have any other pieces of software, I would probably take my Maya models over into Blender to lay out their UVs, because it's just so much easier and so much faster. So you actually kind of have an advantage over the competition in this case. So let's start off over here. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm not done with Photoshop. There's a couple of other things I want to mention. The thing that makes this so easy is that it's kind of like cutting apart a piece of clothing. If you have a shirt, and I'm going to try to draw a quick semi-three-dimensional shirt. This shirt has little seams all over it that hold it together. And if you were to just cut right down those seams, you'd get some pieces that looked, I don't know, probably something kind of like this, as I show off my skills at win, lose, or draw. or Pictionary, or whatever version of that game you like to play. So you'd end up with these individual panels that all look something like this. This is exactly what we're going to be doing to our 3D models. We're going to define some seams, and then we're basically just going to tell Blender, hey, I want you to use those seams to break my model apart and make it as flat as you can. And Blender will do all of that in a single operation, which is very, very cool. Okay, so now we've got everything all separated, and we should be ready to go back over to Blender. Now, because I've separated everything, I can do something that is extremely handy, and that is I can use my local view. If you've forgotten about your local view, that is with the divide or / key that is in your numpad. And this allows me to see just this part of the model. I'm going to hit Tab and take a look at my model. Now here's one little thing I will mention. It may be tricky for some of you to remember what the front and back of your model is at this point. So if you find yourself needing to select an edge and then jump into and out of your local view, by all means do that. But I know that I built my character facing forward down the y-axis. So if I just grab the edge that is right at the back of the y-axis, then everything should be fine. And all I'm going to do is select this loop of vertices that runs from the North Pole all the way down to the South Pole. So pretty simple. Now, once you have this selection, if you hit Control E, you have the ability to mark a seam. And once you do this, this edge will always appear red while you are in edit mode. If you go back to object mode, it disappears. This is a critical step to laying out the UVs. Now, for those of you who are following along, somebody just asked, I'm going to try not to pay too much attention to questions over in BuzzNet. If you have a question, I beg you to put it over in the webinar system. But somebody just asked if the objects need to be separate in edit mode. Yeah, well, they are in my case. I have separated them because it's just easier to pull one thing out at a time. If you don't want to work that way, you don't have to. Somebody just said, should we detach the eyes from the body? And there you go. So I think I just answered that. Somebody did say they're a little unsure on the separate process. The easiest way I can tell you to do that is to go into edit mode, press A to grab everything, press the P key, and then choose by loose parts. And that will just blow your model up by everything that's not permanently welded in. And the hotkey for Mark Seam, it's actually not a hotkey for Mark Seam. You're just opening up your edge menu. So hit Control E to open up your edge menu, and you'll find Mark Seam right there. Now, it does have its own little letter associated with it, so there's an A right there. So if you hit Control E A, you should be able to quickly mark seam. But I generally don't work that way. I generally do a mouse click, for what that's worth. Okay, so we've got our first seam in. However, I really don't want this seam to go all the way to the pole. It was just easier to select that. So I'm going to grab this edge here at the very top, and holding down Shift, I'll grab this edge here at the very bottom, and now we get to see the opposite command. So we hit Control E, and we have Clear Seam. So if you're not satisfied with a seam, you can remove them. Now, holding down the Alt key, I'm going to grab this edge loop here at the very bottom of my sphere. Hold down Shift and Alt, and I'll grab this edge loop at the very top. Once again, I'll hit Control E and mark seam. And this is pretty much it. These are all the seams that we really need for the body. So I am going to ask all of you who are ready to move on from this point to verify that your ready status is in place. If you're not ready, say that you're not ready. And if you just need a minute, say you need a minute, and that's fine. I'm going to pause the video for just one moment while people catch up. And we're no longer recording. But I'm still here. Wolf Knightley just asked, you're not sure how to clear seam. I can go ahead and answer this one off camera because I think I've already said it on the video like 2 or 3 times or more. Just select an edge, and then you're going to hit Control E to bring up your edge menu. Remember, all this stuff is hiding under your edge menu, and hit Clear Seam. The other thing too, and you can remember this, and this is like one of those catch-alls, and this will save you so much confusion in Blender, and I've been driving it home since our very first free class weeks ago now, is you know that it's a command having to do with seams. If you tap the spacebar and start typing the word seam, those commands will appear magically for you. Charles Adams says you just see a blank screen. I don't know if that means your entire computer is off. I need a little more detail than that. I've actually received phone calls from my mom before who said, I just see a blank screen, and I have quietly and with all love and respect asked her to press the small power button in the lower corner of her monitor and solved her issues. Oh, you see a blank screen on BuzzNet.
Are you using the buzznet.3dbuzz.com, or are you using?
Yeah, you need to be at buzznet.3dbuzz.com. Do not use the app. So it's buzznet.3dbuzz.com. I know it works in Chrome. I am pretty sure it works over in Firefox. It should work. Yep. It should work in pretty much everything. I know it works in Safari too because they had it up and going on the iPad.
It works in Firefox 11. It doesn't work properly in the last generations of Firefox 5 based.
Oh, okay.
Because that's why I just had to upgrade.
Now, Wolf, you said, I've done that, but why are all my edges red? Well, because you had everything selected and you marked seams. That's the only thing that makes any sense. If you are running Internet Explorer, you should be okay too, as long as it's a relatively non-archaic version of Internet Explorer. I'm going to just open up Internet Explorer, which you can see how often I use Internet Explorer because it's still got all the default windows popping up, right? Oh, there it is. So yeah, that seems to be working just fine. If I was to close out of here, actually, and close out of there, and
yep,
it blanks it out, but you know. And there's the Blender class. Click join, and yeah, it's working great. So I can click participate, and I'm here. So yeah, even if you're an IE person, then everything should be okay. Wolf.
No, I'm not in the
Wolf Knightley needs to be unmuted for some help. Yeah, give me just a second. What's up, Wolf Knightley?
Oh, hey. Yeah, I tried the clear all, and everything, all the edges are still red.
Did you have all of your edges selected?
Oh, yeah. Okay, you have to have it all selected.
Yes, sir. You have to actually select what edges you'd like to clear. It's not going to auto. It doesn't have like a clear all command. It's selection based. So make sure you're in edge mode. So you're going to use Control Tab E for edges. Tap the A key to make sure you have everything selected, and then Control E to open up your edge menu and choose clear edge. You should be good to go.
Clear seam, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said clear edge.
Oh, clear seam. My bad. And actually, we never did stop and take this break, so this is all actually being recorded.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to making my first seam.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and... Okay, we are back, and I'm wondering, I might have actually done some unpausing in a really weird order, so I might have actually rolled the video forward when we stopped to take a break. If that's the case, all we've done so far is we've laid out the UVs just for the main body of our character. If there's any confusion in that, my apologies. What I'm going to do real quick, just for one last time, for once and for all, is I'm going to nuke out my UVs and create them one final time. Now you can do this over in the Properties panel. You've got your Objects Data area, and this is available for your model in Object Mode and in Edit Mode. It looks like 3 little vertices connected by some edges. And you should see UV maps in here. If you click the minus button, you wipe out your UVs. Now I've also still got all my seams in place, so just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to hit Control E, not Shift E, by the way, and I'm going to clear those out so I have no seams remaining. Now, one last time, I'm going to hold down Alt and grab this edge loop, hold down Shift and deselect the edge there at the top, Shift and Alt to grab this edge loop. So we're making a seam this direction, roll underneath, we'll unselect that one, and then grab these as well. So we've got 2 little rings connected by an edge loop. Control E, mark seam. That's pretty much it. Hit A to grab everybody. U to unwrap. Click the unwrap button, and there you go. And if your unwrapping is facing a different direction, if it's rotated a different way, that's fine. The only other thing I'm going to do is hit the G key and slide this off to the side so that we should be ready to wrap anything else. Now, there was a question while we were on break, and that was from Wolf Knightley, who is having an issue. So what I'm going to do is hand the screen over to Wolf Knightley. So hopefully everybody should be able to see him now. Now, if you could, show me what your problem is.
Well, my unwrapping doesn't look anything like yours, so...
Okay. Can you rotate around your 3D model for me?
Yep.
Oh, you see, now you've got mirroring. Looks like it's still in place.
Oh, I had to turn off mirroring.
Yeah, go ahead and apply your mirror real quick. Don't turn it off, just apply it. We need the full 3D model now. Click the apply button over on your mirror modifier. It's a big button right there, yeah, the one that says apply. And make sure you're in object mode before you do it, of course.
Okay.
Tab key.
Right.
And let's see, it looks like you might have been a little bit off your center axis, and that's going to be an interesting issue. Hit undo real quick for me. Make sure that clipping is active. So check clipping over in your mirror modifier. And get us into edit mode. Because I'm thinking you've got what looks like some vertices that might be off the central axis there, or there's some odd sort of overlapping taking place. Which, yeah, see that you are. What happened here is that you never applied your mirror modifier, and so you're laying out only 1/2 of a mirrored object.
Yeah, I missed that step.
That's okay. Let's see here. And since I can't just take control of it, I got to kind of walk you through this.
You actually can take control. There's an
Let me
option
see.
for that.
Well, I don't know if that's such a good idea. I don't know how much you learn from that, so I'm kind of against it as a
Right.
general rule. So let's do this. Go ahead and get out. Let's turn off your mirror modifier for just a moment. So you know how to do that with the clicking little eye?
Yeah.
All right, do that. Okay, so all of that goes away, which is good. Now, for the time being, also turn off your smooth, your subdivision surface modifier. We don't need that either.
Okay.
Yeah, you're...
T.
All right, so that should get us all...
So
I'm sorry?
you went smooth off.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No.
Just turn off your subdivision surface modifier. You're good to go. Okay, now we need to make sure that all of those vertices that are on the back of this model, so you have to rotate it around back over to the back, make sure you don't have a crease. Those all need to be on the center line.
What do you mean back?
Okay, you see, there you go. This side of it. See, because right now, if you take a look at your axes... Okay, let me ask you this. Which side did you consider to be the front of this character?
Oh, yeah. I was just trying to... Yeah, I guess the front... I'm not sure which one's the front.
That's going to be your first problem.
Yeah.
Is you don't know the front from the back.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Get out of edit mode.
I think it's this one. It should be this one, right?
Well, that's
We mirrored on that
that's
side.
the front on my side. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
so rotate me around to the back.
Front. Oh, okay.
There you go. Now the vertices back here. We're creating a bit of a seam. They had an opening in the back that we need to address. So if you would, go ahead and turn your mirror back on for just a moment. And let's get out of edit mode for just a second. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We can work with this. This is fine. So let's go back into edit mode. Good, no seam, everybody's happy. Jump out of edit mode one more time and click apply.
Apply on the
right
mirror?
there on the mirror, that's right. You want that mirror to be gone. Okay, now, this is where things get a little bit fun for you. Let's go back into edit mode. And you should have one nice complete sphere. That's ideal, that's what we want. Over in your properties panel, I want you to go over to your object data tab. It looks like 3 vertices and a triangle. Perfect, right there. And then I want you to hit the minus button on your UV map. Good, no more UVs. Excellent. Now, switch over to edge mode if you haven't already. So Control Tab E.
I'm on edge.
Good. Now, let's go ahead. I don't glance down there. I usually just...
That's all right.
I'm so automatic with just hitting those buttons anyway. All right, now, I want you to grab that edge loop along the back of your model. We're going to create a seam right down the back.
It's this one, right?
Yep.
Oops. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay. So, Alt script.
Alt-click should select
Wait
the
a minute. I am clicking Alt.
Are you holding down Alt when you click?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then just select them manually if you need to. Just
okay.
get them selected. That's going to be the big thing. That looks good. Actually, if you take a look right now, those are already marked. You don't need to reseam those. If they're red, they're already seams, and it doesn't matter if they're selected right now. If you tell,
there's a seam.
Yep, we'll clear those in a minute.
Got a seam up.
Yep,
Okay, got it.
yep, one crime at a time.
All right.
All right, there you go. You got that one. Mark that as a seam.
Okay. Control E.
Mm-hmm. Now, see these two seams on either side? Mm-hmm. Those need to go away.
Right. So. Then clear seam. We good?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. The other side.
Yep. Remember, it got mirrored. What you'd actually done is you created a seam down the side of the object.
Right.
And all because you didn't realize your mirror was still there. No problem, though.
Okay.
All right. Hit A. Hit U.
And U.
Do it. And a whole bunch of little tiny pieces all over the place. Well, that's interesting. I'm thinking we've got a really odd piece of geometry here. Hang on just a moment. If we look... Oh, yeah, you've got a lot of stacked geometry in there and a lot of, probably a lot of seams you don't need. Okay, try this for me. While you have everything selected as you do right now, hit Control E and clear all seams. Okay. I'm also wondering if you have a lot of geometry that is stacked. So what I want you to do right now is hit spacebar and type remove doubles. So click remove doubles right there.
All right. Oops.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with how you use your mouse there. Somebody just asked, would it be easier to recreate the sphere again? In a lot of ways, yeah, it probably would, but I like trying to at least take a look at the possibility of fixing something, because if you ever get to this point with a character, you're not going to have the ability to just say, well, I'll just remodel the entire character.
So is this, did I duplicate without realizing.
Yeah, it looks like you created several duplicates that were all stacked on top of each other. So you had some nightmare geometry going on. And that's okay. It's going to happen a lot when you're just starting out. However, you are going to need to clean up your face normals, which are now all pointed in different directions. So if you go over to your mesh menu while you're in edit mode, it should be at the very bottom of your view. Hang on, let me get my webinar screen centered up. So yeah, it's mesh, right? At the bottom of your 3D view, you should see mesh. 2 over, left, right. There you go. And you should see normals. And there it is. Yep. And choose recalculate outside. And that cleans everything up.
Okay, do I delete UVs?
Yep, I would, just to be on the safe side. Now, real quick, we're going to do this as quick as you can, but don't mess up. So just go as fast as you need to. Oh, look at that. And check this. Check this out. Your alt clicking is working all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. Awesome. You think it's being a pain, but it's really trying to warn you.
Yep.
Okay. Alt Shift.
Boom. Perfect. Go faster. You're too slow already. Come on. Come on. You should be done by now. What's going on here? Control E. Quick. Mark seam. You.
Freaking out.
Hit A. Hit A. Sorry. Making you feel the pressure. All right. Now hit U.
Okay.
Click Unwrap. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You win.
Still flip side.
That doesn't matter. That makes no difference at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be rotating mine to a similar orientation a little bit later.
All right.
So I'm going to go ahead and do. You're very welcome. I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to take back presentation. And everybody should now see my screen once again. And if Gav, if you could just verify that you do see my screen.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Now we're going to move on. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of our other objects. I'm going to hit Tab first off to get out of edit mode. And then I'm going to hit my / key to show the rest of my objects, of course. Now, we need to lay out the UVs for the pieces of the eyes. This is going to be a pretty, well, it won't be tedious, but it is kind of like the same thing we've done before. So I'm going to grab this great big part for the white of the eye. I'm going to hit my / key to narrow it down. Also, when you do this, please, as we've already seen, keep track of your front and your back. I always cut my eyes down here to the lower left-hand corner of the 3D view and note the axis. So Y should be pointed forward. So I'm going to hit Tab, and we'll just simply Alt-click these guys here at the top and bottom, Shift-click on this guy, Shift-Alt-click here, and I'll just deselect these little guys top and bottom. So it's the exact same thing we did before. Control E, mark seam. Very quick and easy. Hit A to select everything, U for unwrap, and there you go. That's an eye already laid out and good to go. Now, once you've done that, grab everything over in your UV editor and just kind of move this off to the side. Which, actually, in retrospect, we probably don't even have to do that. Now, here's how I'm going to do this. Instead of just showing that same piece over and over again, I'm just going to go ahead and start marching through the remaining pieces of the eye. I would ask that you go ahead and just follow along on your end and do the same thing. And then when we're done, I'll give everybody a minute to sort of catch up. So we'll go ahead and narrow down to just this one piece, which is actually going to be the iris of the eye. Grab a ring, grab this line that runs down the center, Control E, mark seam, and we don't even really have to unwrap this right now for what I've got in mind, but that's okay. I'll do it anyway. So unwrap, click. Grab everybody over here in my image editor, hit G, and slide off to the side. Now, I am keeping an eye on questions as best I can. We want the mirror modifier applied for everything. Yes, I would get the mirror modifier out of everything. And so all of my eyes are part of one object. I need to separate them into 3 separate objects. How do I select the individual meshes as a whole? It's probably something like select connected, but I'm not sure. Well, you can do that. Control L will grab all linked objects, or you can just select everybody, hit the P key, and you can separate by loose parts, and that will do it all in one swift command. Somebody says, I have a problem with the camera for the eye. Where can I adjust the near clipping plane? When I zoom in on the eye, it disappears. Well, if you're really zoomed in that close, then you should be able to find the near clipping plane, I believe, over here. Though I've never really had to adjust it, to be perfectly fair. Yeah, I'm afraid off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly where to adjust that near clipping plane. Another question is, the bigger part of my eyes seem to be joined. Some verts must be together because I cannot split them. Yeah, that will be an issue. If you need to create some really quick flattened spheres to replace those, then you may want to consider doing that. That may be faster than trying to split those apart and really slinging your models around. Okay, so I'm going to continue moving forward, because again, this really is just the same thing over and over and over. And I am doing my very best to keep track of questions over inside the webinar. Okay. And there's one side all done. Let's see, my Control L does not select everything. I can't select an eye in or M. I don't know what that means. Should I just rebuild my character because I screwed up somewhere? If it's just these little pieces of the eye, it may be faster. Okay, in object mode or edit mode. Yeah, thank you. It may be faster just to create some quick flattened spheres for those pieces of the eye. It shouldn't hold you up by maybe just a couple of moments. And somebody asked, how do you clear an object's UVs? Once again, that is going to be over in the Properties panel under Objects Data, and you should see all of the UV maps. And you can just select that and hit the minus button, and that'll wipe those out. Okay. And there's one eye. Let me go ahead and knock out the other one real quick. Now for this eye, guys, I'm actually going to pause the video. So when I come back, when the video starts recording, I'm going to jump back in. All right, Wolf Knightley, I will take a look at your questions here in just a second. All right, so we're back, and let's just do this. Hey. So why don't you show me what your problem is?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to get. I have 2 eyes. Not sure how to. I applied mirror.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, the fact that the mirror is applied is going to be part of the problem, because in the case of the body, we had a single object. Now we technically have 2 objects. Now you can lay these out just fine if you wanted to. You can just you could lay out the UVs for these as 2 separate parts, but try this instead. Go into edit mode. And okay, it looks like they are separated, so they are separate objects, which is really all you need them to be. Hit A to select everything. Okay, well that's interesting. All right, now get out of edit mode. You have multiple eyes in there. Hit delete right now. I just want to see what happens.
Okay. You mean?
Yeah, just delete.
X?
That'll work too. Okay, so it took care of both of those. All right, fine. Undo that real quick. Go back into edit mode. And I've got a black spot over on the right-hand side. It looks like you've still got your mirror over there.
Yeah, okay, hold on. Let me. There, can you see it now?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Go ahead and apply. Well, get out of edit mode and apply your mirror. This will be okay. I got an idea.
Apply it?
Yeah,
okay.
You can't do it in edit mode. You got to be in object mode. So go ahead and click apply. Now, what I want you to do is go into edit mode again. Now, with everything still selected, hit the P key and by loose parts. And it looks like those may not be loose. So grab any one vertex there on the side, or any component, it's fine, and hit Control L.
Oh, okay.
Okay, fine. What I want you to do now is undo back a little bit to get us all the way back to when your mirror was active. It should undo that far without much issue. If you go into object mode, that'll be a lot easier to do. Hit Control-Shift-Z to redo back. There you go. Now undo a couple times, and that should get you your mirror modifier back. Good. Now, back in edit mode with the mirror in place, I want you to pull those eyes a little bit apart from each other. You want a gap. They shouldn't be touching.
Okay.
Martin just asked, hey Zach, when I modeled the eyes, I skewed them a bit. When I unwrapped, they look nothing like yours. Will this cause any issues? It shouldn't. You should be just fine.
Is it clip? Do I need to turn clipping off?
Yes, sir. Good call. Undo your move first. And that's actually what was causing your problem right there, is those vertices right there were merging together. So that's fine. Right there should be just great. Go ahead and jump out of edit mode. Apply your mirror. Jump back into edit mode. Now hit P. And go by loose parts. Ta-da! Do you see what happened right there?
Yeah, they were connected, so it thought it was.
Yeah, so it thought it was
1P.
one great big model, so that's what you were fighting with. So keeping that little gap in there is what solved the problem.
Okay. All right, so now I should be.
You should.
There we go.
You should be good to go.
Thanks.
All right, I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
go ahead and take back my presenter status.
And Wolf, because I've just noticed you were typing in. Can we see your questions? Just below where you were typing them, it should now say for you, organisers and panelists only.
I don't know.
Hello?
Yeah, I don't know if he's still talking to us.
Oh, did you unmute me? Hello?
You see where it says organisers and panelists only, below where you were typing into chat?
Yeah. Wait.
Click on that and switch it over to send questions to staff, and then we'll be able to see your questions again. Zach's probably not looking at his chat window.
Okay, let's see.
Oh yeah, Please make sure you're putting questions into the question system, because if you don't, then yeah, we get all kinds of issues.
Okay, great. Thanks.
When you make someone a panelist, when you make them not, see again, it switches over to a different one automatically. That's why they were hidden.
All right, cool. All right, well, with that, everybody should be all nice and caught up. What I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and when we come back, I will have the rest of the pieces of the eye all laid out. And if I just cut off there, I'd like everybody to do the same. All right, so we are back, and I have laid out the UVs for all of my eye pieces. And there were a couple of questions that came in while we were on break. Someone said, why did we not just delete the backs of the eyes since they can't be seen? And really, that's just one of those decisions that I made in the process of putting together the curriculum for the class, just to keep everything as easy as I possibly could, because it can get a little confusing as to exactly which part should be deleted, if there's any gaps remaining, keeping things placed just precisely. And not doing that does allow for this kind of little cartoony sort of crevicing look that it does look kind of nice, and it does help with the ambient occlusion that we're going to be using a little bit later, but that's kind of secondary. Another question that came in was, is there a way to copy the UV layout and paste it onto another object like in Maya? Yes, there is, and the selection order for that should be select the target object and then the object that has the UVs you want to copy, and it should be, it's under, was it Control, it's not Control J, it's just Join as UVs. It is Control J, it just didn't want to show that. So if you have Join as UVs right there, what that's going to do is send the UVs from the source over to the target. And let's see, testing right now. Somehow I can't get it to work, which is one of the reasons why I wasn't planning on really exploring that too hardcore at the moment. Let's just, since these are really easy objects to unwrap, we're just going to be unwrapping everything. Okay, so now we should be ready to move on to the next portion. I do want to do a quick ready check over in BuzzNet, if folks would be so kind. If you would let me know if you are ready to move on from here just by setting your ready status for me. And if you do that now, I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay, and it looks like most of you are not ready, so I'm just going to pause the video and give everybody a little bit of time. We will be taking a break shortly, but it's going to be a few more minutes. Okay, we're going to take a look at Wolf Knightley's screen again for just a moment. And I hear you, or at least I should hear you.
Hello.
Yep. What you got?
Can you see it? Oh, what's that? Okay. Yeah, I separated the other one.
Yeah, tell me what your problem is. Your problem's right in front of you. Tell me what it is. Think about it for a second.
Oh, I should know it.
You should, because we've already had to do it twice now.
The mirror thing?
You're still mirrored, boss. So go ahead and get out of edit mode.
Oops,
Yep,
okay.
see, there you go. Get out of edit mode. Apply your mirror.
I did.
Now go back into edit mode. Go back into edit mode.
Okay.
There you go. Now separate. Hit the P key.
Okay.
By loose parts.
Yep.
Beautimous. You should be good to go. No.
Okay. I was confused about the mirror thing because I swear that this other one, as soon as I did the loose parts thing, it got rid of the mirror on its own. I'm pretty sure.
No, it didn't. I mean, and
well,
it may have seemed that way at the time if you lost track of the steps, but I assure you that didn't
yeah,
happen.
I might have screwed up there.
No big deal. No big deal.
Right.
Glad you got it though.
All right. Thanks.
No problem. And let me make myself a presenter again. And somebody said, would it be nice to name our objects? It could, but in the end, I'm going to be joining all these back together as a single object anyway, so it's superfluous, really. And yes, I am recording right now, Annie. I made sure to switch the recording back on to make sure that I captured that. And somebody said, are we supposed to slide the UVs to the side for each eyepiece? You can, but I'm going to be doing one final UV layout when we're done anyway, because I've been doing so much of this back and forth sort of stuff that it's just going to keep everything straighter on my end. Okay, I am now glancing over at BuzzNet to see who's ready and who's not. Please update your statuses if you are ready. Let me know that you are ready. Do not forget to do that. That is how I am able to keep up with you guys and know where you're at. And just once again, I just want to mention to folks, if you need me to switch over to your screen, please just let me know. And I am going to give you guys just a couple more minutes, and I'm going to pause the video, or the recording. So we're back, and Kyle Thompson had a question. He said, one of my eyes is wacko for the UV map, and he doesn't know why. And honestly, I don't know if I've seen a wacko eye. So I want to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Kyle the presenter, and he's going to show us his wacko eye so we know what he's talking about. Oh, that is kind of wacko, now that you mention it.
Yeah, and the other one I'm not really sure why that is, because the other one looks like it should.
Well, in that case... Oh, wow, you got those really kind of... Ooh, is that a seam that I see going down both sides of that?
It might be. I don't know, because the one that came out of it, because I did the mirror around the empty there that we did last class when I recreated these, and the other one came out fine, so I'm not sure why, if they're mirrored, one showing a different UV map than the other.
Well, the easy thing, of course, would be to just double-check your
Could
seams.
you go down to the bottom of it and... Oh, sorry, the screen's just changed. In the
Sorry.
view you were looking at before, go down and look at the bottom of it from both sides. Right. And the top. Huh. You haven't got any double copies like Wolf Knightley did.
I don't think so. I can try and... you mean remove doubles?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you probably... Oh. And didn't remove anything. No, what I'm seeing doesn't really look like that's a problem. Go ahead and just nuke the UV map on this real quick. Since you're staring at it right there anyway.
Yep. Hold
Down.
on, the screen sharing's in my way.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, there we go. And just do another unwrap. Let's just see what comes out.
All right.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, go ahead and nuke out all of your seams and recreate those for me. Actually, I want you to do this instead. Hit the Z key, and you still got your smooth on there. That's interesting, but I don't think that's necessarily the culprit. Let me take a look at your modifiers real quick.
Okay. Sorry.
Now, what are you doing?
I only have one monitor, and the screen sharing gets in my way.
Oh, I see. I see.
Oh, there we go. I might have gotten rid of it.
Okay, so you don't have any...
Sorry. There we go.
Okay. Go ahead and just shut that off for now. We don't really need it to be on at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just a little less visually distracting. Switch over to vertex mode for me.
Yep.
Grab any one vertex and just click on it and move it for me. Okay, so I don't see any doubles, so that's all well and good. Go ahead and switch back over to edges.
Okay.
Grab all edges with A. Control E. Clear your seams.
Is it these?
Gav.
Yeah, in the UV unwrap settings, there's settings to do it by weight instead of by area. It may be that's been switched over.
Oh, yeah, that's
You know
true.
what I mean?
I believe so. I've never actually had to switch that over.
I can't remember exactly where it is.
Should I recreate my seams?
You know what? You could probably just duplicate over that other piece of the eye for now, and that will just keep everything moving along nice and smoothly.
Okay.
I think that might be a simpler way to go about the problem.
Okay. So... duplicate...
Shifty.
Oops.
I mean, you could
So if I look at
you could
that
do
one-
a quick mirror,
Yeah.
and just apply the mirror right away, and that'll get it right where it needs to be. Is your mirror empty still in your scene?
Yeah.
Well, then you could just do a quick mirror around that. That'll be nice and
Okay.
fast. I would move the mirror up above the subdivision surface modifier, though, just to be on the safe side. And then
Okay.
when you're done, click apply. and then go back into edit mode.
Oops.
Hit P, and that should separate by loose parts. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all, man. Okay, and I'm going to make myself the presenter again, and that's Photoshop, which I don't really want to see Photoshop right now. I want Blender. Hello, Blender. Okay, so we're back over here, and let's see, there's, I'm going back over questions since I was kind of helping somebody out. Let's see, so there's Adam, and could it be object scaled inside out? That's possible. If your normals were reversed, it could be having a hard time determining what is flattening things out. So that's certainly something to think about as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, folks. I do want to take a break here very soon, but we've got to kind of march forward. It's going to be kind of a long class, however we dice this up. So let's take a look at one of the eyebrows, and this should be a really quick and easy thing to flatten out, as I'm sure you can imagine. What I'm going to do is just switch over to a local view of this. Now there's a couple of different ways one could go about this process. It just depends on how many different individual pieces you really need. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to grab all of these edges around the back side here, and I'm going to make these a seam. Now let me just see what this looks like if I was to lay this out. It probably will do something close to what I want it to. Yeah, that's fine. So it flattened out, so I have access to all the sides, and then this one little piece in the end I can just kind of crush down and stick in a corner somewhere because it's way on the back and nobody's ever going to see it. So let's go ahead and get out of the local view. You get to see that one more time. It's very, very straightforward. So check this out. You see my blocky little eyebrows here. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to grab all of these edges around the back side. Control E, mark seam, grab everybody, hit U, and unwrap. And that's it. Now I'm going to pause the video for just a moment, and I want everybody to, who can, get up to this point, and I'll wait for everybody to say they're ready. Please make sure you're checking out BuzzNet. Someone just asked, what about for people with just a plane for eyebrows? If you are not planning on using the Solidify modifier in order to give your eyebrows some actual three-dimensional depth, some thickness, then you can just lay out those planar faces, and that's a real quick thing. You can just select all of those faces, hit U, and they will lay out very, very nicely. If you are planning on using Solidify, you'll want to use Solidify first and apply that modifier, and then you can lay those new faces out. Someone asked if, Jane has asked, I did not apply any modifiers for the character. Should the Solidify be applied along with the mirror? The answer is yes. You should go ahead and apply at least Solidify. The only modifier you don't need to apply at this point is going to be your subdivision surface. You can hang on to that one. But go ahead and apply everything else, because you're using those modifiers to make the geometry that you need to lay out. Someone asked if they can see my seams. Of course you can. Let me come up here, and I'm going to go into a local view real quick and just go into edit mode, and you can see it's really just defining those faces along the back of the eyebrow.
We paused?
No, we're actually not paused. So that's okay. I'm about to go on anyway. And once again, I just want to remind people, if you're logged into BuzzNet in multiple browsers, please close one of them. If you have it in multiple tabs, please close one of them. And thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on from here. So we've got our eyebrows. The next thing we're going to take on is going to be the hat. Now the hat is kind of its own little creature. We have to actually start thinking about this from the clothing standpoint, and this is going to get a little bit fun. So let me go into edit mode. What I'm going to do is create a seam that will break apart the inside faces of the hat. Basically, if I was to try to select them and show them to you, it would probably look something like this. Well, let's see how badly... Okay, that grabbed all the way around, and I don't want these. So I'm just trying to do this as an example. And for those of you who don't remember how to convert a selection, there's a neat trick to keep in mind. You can hit Control-Tab-V to go to vertices, Control-Tab-F to go to faces. So what we're going to do is separate out these faces, these inside faces, from the outside faces, and that'll be the main part of creating the layout for our hat. So let's go ahead and do that now. Holding down the Alt key, I'll grab, well, let's make sure I'm in edge mode first. Let's grab this row of edges here. I'll hold down Shift and Alt and grab those edges all the way around the back of the hat band. On the underside, holding down Shift and Alt, we'll grab these edges. Let's grab the ones on the underside of the brim and then just connect these up, like so. Once I have those, I'm just going to hit Control-E and mark seam. Now somebody said, should we apply Solidify for the hat first? Yes, you should, because if you take a look here, I'm using the geometry that was created by that Solidify. Apply every modifier except your subdivision surface. I'll say that again. Every modifier except your subdivision surface. And now somebody said, I've already applied the subdivision surf and now my unwrapping looks a bit weird, somehow distorted. That's because you probably have a whole lot more faces that you're dealing with. If you run into that, it may be a good idea to jump back to a previous save where you still have your original geometry, because you won't be able to easily extract that, I'm afraid. There's no anti-subdivision surface modifier that I'm aware of. And someone said, can you show the bottom seams again? There you go. So you can still work this way. Again, you're just going to have a lot more edges that you will have to select in order to create your seams. Now, once you have the top and bottom seams, we need to split the hat around the back, because right now it'd be hard to lay. It's hard to lay a perfect ring flat unless you cut the ring. So we're going to cut this right at the very back of the hat. So holding Alt and just get this nice little edge loop all the way around the back of the hat band. Hit Control-E and mark that as a seam as well. Once you've done that, you're good to go to layout. So just grab everything, hit U, and unwrap. And you see you get a nice outside of the hat and nice inside of the hat. Now at this point, I'm going to pause the video and I want people to catch up, so I'll give you just a couple of moments.
Yeah, I didn't get. Are you making two different seams, or are you doing both seams at? Or are you like doing the bottom line and the top line all at once? You follow? I can't hear you.
Oh, hello. Sorry, you're still there.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter in the end if you do these all at once or if you do them separately. You're perfectly fine with just grabbing a seam and marking it, grabbing another seam and marking it, grabbing another seam and marking it, if you want to work that way. Of course, it's slower, but you could if you wanted to. So if you want to create one edge along the top, all I did was I hit Alt-click up here, Shift-Alt-click down here to grab this seam, then Alt-Shift here, Alt-Shift here, and Alt-Shift there. So I just selected those together, but you could have just as easily marked one as a seam, then selected the other and marked it as a seam. Doing them all at once is completely irrelevant.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so I am going to repause for just a moment. Okay, so we are back, and we've got our hat all nicely laid out at this point. So just to show that one more time, here's what we end up with. We have the outside portion of the hat and the inside portion of the hat. as these two individual shapes. You see we have a seam across the top and a seam on the bottom, and then we just kind of cut the ring of the hat band with a seam at the very, very back. All right, so now, once we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and get out of our local view. And it's time for us to take on our shirt. And once we get the shirt all nicely laid out, I will be giving everybody a nice little break to breathe. Now, I'm getting a couple of questions in. After applying Solidify, mine has purple edges. I'm trying to remember what purple edges actually come from. Let me see here. If I grab an edge and hit Control E, they could have been creased, I suppose. Let me see this. You mean like this kind of purple? If that's the case, then they were just creased, which you can do. There is actually a hotkey for that. So you might have hit Shift-E at some point and just creased them. If you did that, all you need to do is select those edges again. So, I mean, if they look like this, you can just you select them, hit Shift-E, and then just drag your cursor back in toward the center until all the purple goes away. So it's kind of like scaling, in a way. And Wolf Knightley says, my unwrap looks different than yours. Can you look at it? Not just now. Okay, I will. Because I've got another layer of unwrapping we're going to do when we're done with everything. But let me go ahead and take a quick look real quick. So let's see. Where is my list of attendees? There you are. And let's go ahead and make you the presenter. And let me unmute you real quick. All right, what you got for me?
Right here.
You forgot the seam at the back.
I forgot the seam at the back?
Yes, sir. We split the hat band with a seam at the back, remember?
No.
No? Okay. Well, we did. That was the very last seam we created. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I guess right here.
Uh-huh.
All right. I mean, I could do this later if.
Well, just go ahead and get it split real quick, and let's take a quick look.
Okay.
You're going to need to go all the way around that hat band, though, so try and alt-click.
Okay, I did. And oh, I'm going to need to delete this, right?
Delete what? No, you're fine. You're fine.
Nope.
No, you can just unwrap it again. Hit A to select everybody.
Oops.
Tap the A key. There you go. Now hit U. And unwrap. And it looks like you are still missing a seam somewhere, so do me a favor.
Is there a seam in the front?
Well, let me actually jump back real quick. I'm going to leave you unmuted, but I'm going to make myself the presenter again, and I want you to take a closer look at my screen. And let me hit Control up arrow so everything's nice and big, and I'm going to show just this guy by himself for just a moment. So we have one contiguous, non-stop, unbroken ring that goes along the top part, the inside of the hat band. You see how that works?
Yeah.
All right. Underneath, we have a contiguous, non-stop, unbroken band of seams that go around the underside of the hat band and along the underside of the bill.
Yeah, I thought that's what I did. Did I not do that?
It looks like you may not have, but we'll take a quick check here in just a moment. And then, of course, we've got the split in the back.
Oh, God. Okay, I can see it. There's missing a connection.
There you go. I figured there'd be one in there somewhere.
Just one little edge.
Yeah. And sometimes that one, actually, when you're doing these automated kind of tasks, that one edge makes all the difference in the world. So no worries.
Can I see what yours looks like again?
Sure. Let me go back over here and hit the tab key.
I think this is right.
And let me get back out of here, and I'll hit A and show you the layout so you can see everything. Something like this. It doesn't have to look exactly like this.
It's like that, except it's the top is flipped.
That's fine.
But
that won't make any difference at all.
Yeah.
So sometimes that algorithm just sees things a little differently. It has a lot to do with vertex placement and overall angles and what your normals are doing. And so I wouldn't stress at all at this point.
All right, I'm good. Thanks.
Just like everybody's models look a little different, everybody's UV layouts are going to be a little different. It's just the nature of the beast. All right, I'm going to remute you. Thank you very much. And kaplow. All right, so now the last thing we're going to do, as I start to get a little more excited, is tackle the shirt. So let me get out of local view. And then I promise we'll take a break, okay? I need one too, actually. I need to run to the bathroom. So let's go ahead and show just the shirt. Now here's how we're going to do this, folks. Let me hit Control up arrow so everybody just sees the shirt. So you should be able to do this. Now we're going to cut the collar off with a seam. You see how my collar comes together right here at this little edge? That's where I'm going to make my cut. So I'm going to hit Alt and just select this edge loop. Now notice, check this out. Blender gets a little confused at this point, and you can see why. It doesn't really know if it should go this way or if it should go up. And because it doesn't know, it says, well, I'm not going to make a decision then. So I want it to go up. So I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and click right up the back. Remember, that's the edge that we extruded to make the collar go up a little higher. And then holding down Shift and Alt, we'll grab these as well. Now let's just go ahead and mark that as a seam right now. So Control E, mark seam, no problem. So it's just splitting the outside of the collar. Now, however, we need to do the same thing to the inside. So Alt-click, go around this little high edge, and grab all these guys, and same thing. It's just Control-E, mark another seam. All we've really done is make some seams that define where the collar begins. But we need to lay the collar out completely flat, and right now we can't yet do that. So to make that happen, I'm going to select this edge that connects my two current seams. It's right there in the apex of the collar. And I'll mark that as a seam. That's an important one. If you forget every other seam that I've made, well, you can probably figure those out. But if you just forget this one, you're going to run into some real headache of trying to make this go flat, and it really never will. Now, the last seam I'm going to cut is just one that goes down the inside of each of the pieces of the collar. So something to write about there. It doesn't really need to go much further than this. And about like so, really. That's all we really need. So if everybody can see those, and I'll hit Control-E and mark seam one more time. Now, because I'm already anticipating one or two folks saying, hey, can you show me those seams one more time? I'm going to show you those seams one more time. Also, I need to track down my questions panel, which seems to have run away on me. Questions. Hello. Am I only getting one UV when I unwrap the hat? You should not be able to just get one UV. Let me back.
I assumed him. I think the way I read it was he meant he was getting one block.
One panel. If you're getting one panel, then you have seams that are not yet completed. You have a hole in your seam somewhere. So just real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over to object mode. Let's get out of local view, jump back over to the hat, and I'm willing to put some pretty good money on the idea that your seam that you should have along the bottom or the seam that you have along the top are not contiguous, meaning you're missing an edge. So like if I had something like this where I just cleared off that one seam, that's going to be a problem. That must be a contiguous edge. This must be a contiguous edge. And where we cut the hat band also must be a contiguous edge. If there's any problem with that, if there's any gap in that seam, you will only end up with one piece, period. That's just how it works. And think about it. It's just like if you were cutting a real hat up into pieces. If you imagine this hat like something that you took an X-Acto knife and you were cutting up into tiny little bits and parts, if you didn't complete your cut all the way around, you'd still have one piece. And that's exactly the way it works here. So what you see in the real world is what you would see here as well. Now, let's see. Do you need to regenerate UV map if you edit mesh with loop cut and slide later? You don't necessarily need to, but I would just at least keep an eye on it. And if it causes a problem, then you'll know it in your texturing. And I would at least be ready to regenerate your UVs. It's one of the reasons why you will generally want to accomplish all of your modeling before you lay out your UVs. It all needs to be finalized before moving forward to this point. It looks like I did my mesh wrong. Mine doesn't match up with yours. I wouldn't stress that too terribly much at this point, as long as you can get something that looks relatively hat-like, like a hat, that you can flatten out to some degree. You should be okay for what we're going to be doing. True story. Let's see. Not a hat, the shirt. Well, even that, you'll see why that really won't be the end of the world. Hang on just a second. I know it could be too much to ask, but could you please show the seams for the shirt again? I was planning on it, actually. Let me get out of the hat, because we've already shown that a few times now. Let me go back over to the shirt. And here's what I'm going to do. Check this out, folks. I'm going to grab all these, and I'm going to hit Control-E, and I'm going to clear them. Now I'm going to recreate them one more time, okay? So, first, we're going to slice off the collar, basically. So if you think of this like actually cutting seams, we're going to cut all the way around the collar on the outside. Easy enough. Go ahead and mark that seam. Now, once again, I'm doing that with Alt and Shift, really. That's all I'm clicking. Now, we'll do the same thing to the inside, like so. Control-E, mark seam. No problem. We need to connect these two rings, however. Because we have one on the outside, and we have one on the inside, but they need to be connected. So we're going to grab this little edge that serves right here at the apex, and we're going to mark that as well. Our last seam is really, and it doesn't matter which of these edges you grab, as long as you have something that goes from the inside of the collar all the way out to the outside, you'll need that to help kind of flatten everything out. And mark that. Okay, let me jump over to your screen real quick, Wolf. Here I come. Okay, what you got for me, Wolf Nightly? That looks almost exactly like mine. Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you so you can talk. What you got for me?
Yeah, you have this line, and it goes up. Like, see, I have it up here, I guess.
Yeah, no matter. Doesn't matter. Just don't worry about the one that goes up then.
But just do that here?
Yeah, right there where you're started is perfect. You just want to slice off the collar. Now, I mean, all that said, really, you can slice it either way, and it's not going to make any difference at all. As a matter of fact, look, I'm just going to make an example of you real quick. Are you excited about that? You should be.
Okay, I'm excited.
Good. Go ahead and slice it that one higher. That one that you're all confused about. You'll see what it does. Okay. It won't break anything, I promise. And it'll give you a little more shirt surface to work with anyway.
Oops. And go up.
Yep, no problem. You got it from here. Really, you're just going to be, make that seam go all the way around the inside and the outside. Now, things are going to be a little different for you. I'm going to show you how. So, there you go. Now, look on the inside. You see what happened? You have this one contiguous seam. That's perfectly fine, but it is going to change just a couple of things for you. So go ahead and mark that as a seam. Now, what I want you to do is take a look at your collar right now. You see that V shape that is being made by your collar?
Yep.
I want you to grab the edges on the inside of that V, starting at the base of it and working your way all the way out to the tips of the collar.
You mean like this?
I mean exactly like that.
All right. And this side?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, just the inside. I'm sorry, just the inside, not the outside at all.
And did you want that center one?
I don't, but it doesn't matter. That's the least of my worries.
No, I could see where you were going with that.
Yeah. Now go all the way to the tips of the collar with those edge selections, mate.
Oh. Probably,
There you go. Look at you getting all slick with the hotkeys. That's what I want to see. All right, now hit Control-E and mark those as seams. Your layout is going to look slightly different than mine, but this will work just fine. No problem.
All right, ready to...
Yep, you're ready to move on. And I've already muted you because I'm kind of in like rapid fire mode. So I'm going to switch myself back over to the presenter. Good job, Wolf.
Nice face.
And we should all be right back to here. Now, let's see. I'm looking for any more questions. And yes, we're about to go on break. So here's what we're going to do. I'm looking for ready checks, actually, see who's all got these seams in place. And I'm hoping that most of you do. There is a couple more things we need to do with the shirt, though. We're not quite done. Do you remember? Does everybody remember? At least on my end, I've got this little front of the shirt and the little button as well. We need to lay these out. Now, I could just leave these to you as a challenge, but I'm not going to. So here's the little folded piece of cloth. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to lay this out just like an eyebrow. So we're going to grab just these pieces here at the back, hit Control-E, mark those as a seam, and that's pretty much all I need to do. If I want to lay those out just so you can see what they look like, which it's fine, we don't really need to worry about it too much, but I will. So you unwrap, and there you go. That'll be perfect. Now let's get out of here and go to our little button. Now this is an ugly little piece of geometry, I'll be the first to admit. But that's okay. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take the back of the button, like so. And we will go ahead and mark those as a seam. Grab everybody and unwrap. And as horrible as that looks, it will work okay for our cases. For our purposes, it'll be just fine. And I can edit it just a little bit. Because in the end, I'll be honest, this is going to end up just getting smoothed out. And it will appear as just a couple of pixels worth of white button. So I'm not really all that concerned about exactly what it looks like. Though I can clean it up a little bit later once we get our final UV layout in place. So here's what's going to happen. I am going to give everybody a big break. We're going to give everybody a 15-minute break, and we're going to reconvene at my local time will be about 5 till the hour of 3. If you need to use this break to get a little bit caught up, by all means do that. If you if you need to just grab a real quick drink of water or go to the bathroom real quick and then come back and then sit down and finish up what we've got so far, then please do that, because when we get back, I'm going to answer any remaining questions, and then we're going to move over to the texturing process. So, as of right now, I'm officially declaring a break. So we are back from our little break, and there were a few questions that came in, so let me go ahead and address those real quick. Somebody did ask if we didn't mean to unwrap the shirt, which is fine. We're going to do a massive unwrap on everybody here in just a moment. Somebody still can't unwrap the hat. If you are still experiencing problems with pieces as we move forward, you may have to just approach those later. You can create a very simple unwrap of a simple object like a sphere and still follow along as we go through the rest of this. But moving forward, I'm going to have to start requesting that if you're really struggling to keep up, that you switch back over to the recorded video a little bit later. Can you show me the unwrap of your button again, please? That's, well, it's really basic. We've already kind of taken a look at it during the break, but here it is, just real quick. It looks ugly, but that's okay for the time being. I just need that to be kind of a little white block somewhere, so that'll be just fine. Somebody talks about that they need to maybe redo their golf club. That's fine. Let's see, and I think that's about it. Did you make a seam at the front and back of the button? No. In this UV layout, will you be showing us how to get them proportional? In effect, yes. That's incidentally what's about to happen here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and move on. What I want to do is create an actual UV layout that we can paint on and that looks nice, and I'm going to do this real quick. You don't necessarily have to follow along with me as I do this. It's just for my own edification. I'm going to grab these corner pieces of my button, and I'm going to make those into a seam, and then when I do a new layout, like so, it's just a little easier to read. A teensy little bit easier to read. And that's just because I grabbed those edges at the corner. Okay, so now, we need to make one massive layout for everybody. To do this, we need to join everybody. So currently, I have no modifiers on any part of my character, which is great. So let's just select all of our bits and pieces for this guy. In fact, I'm just going to do a box select and drag straight across. That should get everyone. And I'll hit Control-J to join. You can confirm that just by clicking on what you join and move it away, and if everything comes with you, you did what you needed to do. If something stays behind, well, then obviously you didn't join that object. I just created seams at the back of the button. You'll notice that I do not have a subdivision modifier on this guy right now. I removed that way early on because it's real easy to take those on and put them back, or take them off and put them on, like so. So if you've got one, just nuke it before you join. It'll just be so much easier on you, so much less hassle.
And it's something that you will really kick yourself if you forget and join it together with one piece.
Command to join again is Control-J, or if you ever need to know any command, as long as I say the name of the command, I'm going to keep drilling this into people's heads until they start remembering it. You can tap the spacebar and start typing the name of the command, and Blender will tell it to you. Blender does a very, very good job of teaching itself to you if you but take the time to let it. Okay, so at this point, we should have all of our pieces joined together. What we're going to do is jump back into edit mode. And you'll see everything's kind of piled up and looking pretty nasty and scattered to the four winds, but that's okay. I'm going to hit A to select everything, and we're going to do one massive unwrap. This just keeps things easy on everybody. It keeps us all kind of on the same page. Now, what we're looking at is basically all of the bits and pieces of our character, as you can see here. Now, you can, if you have a different layout than this, if things are rotated in different directions or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. You can edit these pieces however you like. You can hit Control-L to grab an entire piece, and you have the same commands that you have over in regular Blender when modeling. You can move them around, you can rotate them, and you can basically create your own layout. Now, I could talk for a while about the importance of using as much of this texture space as you can. It really is important once you start creating textures to really use up as much of this area as you possibly can. However, because this is kind of a beginner level thing, because we're just getting started, this is going to be more than adequate. Just creating this basic layout that we can all follow along with from here, where we do everything at once. So what I want you to do is just one more time, just to kind of reiterate, is I want you to go into edit mode, grab everything, so hit A to grab all of your bits and pieces that should be all joined together, and just unwrap them all as one big object. And you should get some sort of layout that's vaguely like this. Now, you will want to take just a moment and kind of figure out where things go. Now, we can reorganize. That's the great thing about this. The only thing is, all of your pieces, all of these panels that you see in here, all need to stay inside this grid. That's your big important thing. So what I'm going to do is make a few changes, and here's, I feel that I really need to kind of drive this home. Your layout does not, I repeat, does not need to look exactly like mine. If it's a little bit different, that's okay. The only thing that's important to you is that you know where things are. You know what part is an eyebrow, what part is an eyeball, what part is a shirt, what part is the body, and so forth. Everything else is really kind of beside the point.
It's just it has to stay within that grid.
It all needs to...
Otherwise it won't get texture.
That's right. It all needs to fit inside this grid. Everything else is kind of secondary to that one little factoid. Okay, so let me do a little bit of arranging here. Now, I'll be honest, right here off the top of my head, I can't really tell what the top of this is and what the bottom is. And rather than bog myself down with that, for the sake of this class, I'm just going to guess that this should be oriented something kind of like so. Now, if I wanted to, I could leave it tilted sideways. It doesn't really matter. This is all just personal preference. Also, even though I said that everything has to fit in the grid, often, while I'm just kind of laying things out, I don't think about that. I'm just kind of scattering these pieces around and getting them organized. Only when I'm finished grouping stuff together, then will I try to fit everything in a way that makes sense. So I'll grab a piece, hit Control-L, and hit G, and I can tell this is a piece of the shirt. So's this. So I want to keep these next to each other. I do not want them to overlap. That's going to be important. I don't want to see any overlapping whatsoever. I'm going to say that one more time for anybody who wasn't listening, Wolf. I do not want any overlapping in the UV editor. Please make sure that there is no overlapping at all. So these are eyebrows. Let's start grabbing all the pieces of our eyes and setting them off to the side. This looks like two parts of the eyes, these two guys here. Obviously, at this point, just about any spheres that I find are going to be parts of the eye. So we're going to move those over. Now, if you're struggling at this point, I'm going to just kind of stress to you that you really ought to start practicing your Blender navigation, because really all we're doing is just using G and R. So Control L will grab you an entire panel, and G and R for rotate. So grab and rotate. How do I know what part is what? Can I highlight in the UV layout and the component highlighting like the 3D view like in Maya or Max? I have not seen Blender be that nice about your selections for moving them over.
It will, but only only if you've got link mode on, which there are limitations on when you're allowed to have link mode on. It's one of the buttons along the bottom of the UV window, I believe.
Well, let's just see real quick.
Yeah, back to that one that you had your...
And let's see, if I grab everybody here, yeah, selection, can't select linked when sync is enabled. So let me just do a box select. There you go. So yeah, you can. And that's going to be right there at the bottom of your UV editor window. Keep UV and edit mode mesh selection in sync.
I find myself switching between those two a lot because link mode is so handy with UVs, but you can't use it when you're finding out what they are.
Wolf, if you're having a hard time selecting all of your character, it's probably because you haven't joined everything together. That would be my first guess. So it is kind of terrible though that you can't use.
It's the primary time when you'd want to use link.
Yeah,
and you can't. But hey.
But it's something, right? Okay, so let's see. Let me grab the hat. I'm going to move the hat up for now. So I'm going to do eyes to the right, the body to the left, along with the shirt. We'll just consider the shirt to be kind of the same thing. And there's the collar. It's pretty easy to see what that is. If you're having a hard time, remember you do have this selection sync you can use here. So let's see. Can you do the Control Plus? Yeah, you can use Control Plus if you can't use linked, and that will help a little bit. So I guess I could do like a box select here and then middle mouse drag a box around these pieces of the shirt, and I would just have those. But yeah, it starts to get a little...
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it gets a little dodgy. You have to kind of work with it. It's just, I guess the last thing I would say, like the final word would just be, this is a good way to just kind of see what's what, not necessarily to move it around. And I'm just going to rotate this like so. Now,
Seth James made a good point. You can use linked in the 3D window, apparently.
Oh, well, there you go. And these look like pieces of the body, so we'll grab those and move them over. And these are parts of the eye. Let's move them over here. Whoop.
You can see when I answer someone's question.
I can see that it has been answered. Wolf says, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to join everything together. That's going to be Control J. Again, I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it again and again, and hopefully at some point everybody will listen. When you know the name of the command, and you do, you said, I don't know how to join, hit spacebar. Type join. Watch what happens. Blender will show you the way. Blender will guide you.
Write it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Join, Control J. That's what I've always done back in the days before this magic of the internet and so forth.
And this looks like the button from the shirt, so I'll move that over here. And let's see, this is probably that little piece of fabric right at the front of the shirt. So I'll move this over here with the shirt.
Mohammed asks why all my UVs are moving while moving a selected set.
Check that you don't have proportional editing on.
Yep.
So if I turn on proportional editing, I get something like this. And if you have your radius big enough, you won't even see any distortion. It'll just look like they're all moving, and that's problematic, obviously.
I wish there was a certain other app where you had access to the identical tools and hotkeys in UV editing that you do in.
No, I didn't catch any of that. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying.
Oh, well, in Macs you haven't got access to half the
yeah.
hotkeys, or they're different for the same thing.
And these look like the final parts of our eye, so I'll go ahead and move these over. And let's see, even more final parts of our eye.
Finally final?
Yep. And what's this? We've got some random tidbit. I think that's like the back of the button. Looks right. So let's go ahead and just move this over here. So I've cleaned out my grid at this point. I've got all of my bits and pieces all scattered to the four winds. And now it's time for me to actually create a layout. Now at this point, since I laid everything else out, or laid everything out at one time, all of these pieces are proportional to one another, meaning they're all roughly about the same size, which is pretty convenient. There is something I would like to do, though, and this is going to be an important thing for our next step, so please, everyone follow along with me. While I've got everyone selected, I'm going to come down here to my texture area at the bottom of my image and UV view, and I want to create a brand new texture. So I'm going to click the little plus button. I'm going to call this, in my case, let's do ball character underscore, and this is just really, for me, class. So I know this is the one that I did with the class. So ball character underscore class. And then we'll call this AO for ambient occlusion. So again, all I did was click the plus button at the bottom where the texture is, and I've named this. I don't really care what you name it, but it's going to be for ambient occlusion. So something you can identify later on will probably make your life easier. We don't need alpha, but I do want to see the UV test grid. So we'll check that, and then click OK. And that applies that to everything. If we jump over here to our 3D view and hit Alt-Z to show shaded, we can see the result of those UVs on our character right now. And basically, what you're looking for is, for the most part, a bunch of relatively nicely ordered squares across the surface. You may not have that. If you have, now, and notice in this case, like on the body, some of these squares get really big while they're kind of smaller on the shirt. That doesn't faze me. That's just fine. But if you start seeing your squares doing really weird things, like getting wavy and crunchy and not looking like squares at all, then you know you got a problem. Which is the whole reason we've turned that on. How did you turn off the black while in the UV editor? You can just click the X button on the texture while you have everything selected. So if you hit A and close out your texture, then that all goes away. Now in this case, I've done that now, and I need to see the texture again. So you have this little tiny Browse Images to be Linked button. It looks like a little picture with the corner folded up. And can you hang on just a second? Can you hang on just a second?
It's about this.
Sir, go ahead.
But yeah. I was thinking, can you get at the any of the other test grids through this method? Because there's a checkerboard one and a coloured checkerboard as well as the little cross symbols. I just didn't see an option for it anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The only one I've ever used is this one.
Okay.
So anyway, if I close that out, it's gone. If I select any one of these textures from here, that will be applied. So if I reapply this ball character AO, that jumps right back in. So that's how you take the black out and put it back in if you need to. But that texture that I created is going to be important. So if you think you can skip that, you will run into a little bit of a problem in a moment. So all I did, again, was I just clicked the plus key, gave this texture a name, unchecked alpha, and checked test grid, and that was it. Just remember the name that you give it. That's going to be important a little bit later on. Okay, so now we need to create our own custom layout of things. Now, since we've seen these squares, and because to me they're a little visually confusing, I am going to go ahead and switch those off for the time being. And we'll just use the grid, and I'm going to hit Control up arrow here inside my image editor so we get a nice big view here. I'm going to start off by bringing in the most important pieces first. And to me, the most important pieces will be the body, the shirt, and the hat. Everything else is pretty small and could, for our purposes, just have a plain Jane solid color on it. So let's start with the collar, which is this big long piece here. I'm going to hit Control L and hit G, and I'll just move that in here. We'll grab the body. Now I'm going to see what's the top and bottom here. To check what's the top and bottom, I'm going to turn on sync mode. And then I'll grab one of the vertices here at the top, and let's go into wireframe in the 3D view. And it looks like that is at the top, so you can see that edge is selected. So it's a nice way to verify what the top and what the bottom is, was just use sync mode with wireframe. We'll go ahead and turn that off though, because if I don't, I'll go crazy because I won't be able to use my link mode. So I'll hit Control L. And I'll move this over, so there's the body. Actually, let's save the body for just a minute. Let's bring in the shirt first. So grab the two pieces of the shirt. That seems to make sense. And we'll tuck these right over the collar. I don't want them to get too terribly close. I want them to have a little bit of a gap, but not much of one. Say about like so. Now, the remaining pieces of the shirt we can just kind of stuff in wherever they'll go. So we can grab this little piece for the folded piece of cloth here at the front of the collar, and we should be able to just kind of cram that maybe right in between the two circles for the shirt. The button I would keep relatively close so we don't get too confused about what it is. Something you will learn eventually as you work with these UV layouts, readability is going to be a pretty big factor, but you can't always have it. It's going to be kind of a war between using as much of this space as you can and having something that is nicely readable that you can easily understand what you're looking at. And don't be surprised if you can't have both all the time. This is the back of the button, I think. I'll just kind of cram it over here someplace. Now let's bring in the top of the body, which I'm just going to stack right on top of the shirt. We've got some extra room for these circles that are the top and bottom of the body. So let's grab those and we'll hit Control L. I'll put one right about here, and I'll put the other right underneath it. So I'm just looking for extra area, really. Now, let's see. If people are asking questions in BuzzNet, it gets very difficult for me to keep up. If you have an official question, you really need to put that into the webinar system. I just want to keep reminding people of that. I've fallen behind to only having created the texture with the UV test grid. What have I missed? Well, nothing really, other than the fact that I did switch that off. And you can do that. If let's see, I'll just go ahead and bring it back up. So you should be seeing something vaguely like so. All I did was, with all of the vertices selected, just click the X button and make that go away. It just allows me to just see the original grid once again. Now earlier, I had separated all of the pieces into some zones. I had moved all of the pieces of the body and the shirt over to the left. I moved all the pieces of the eyes over to the right. And I moved the pieces of the hat up above. All I'm doing now is just moving everything back into the grid in a layout that makes sense to me. There's no right or wrong to this, as long as you can read it and see where things are. Why my UVs are not proportional like yours? Well, there could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be you've scaled something. It could be that you have still not laid out everything at once. That was the last thing we did, if you recall, is we joined everything together as a single object and did one final UV layout that affected everything. And that kept everything nice and proportional. From there, we didn't do any more scaling. And if you have done that already, then everything should be reasonably in proportion to one another, because that's how Blender is going to be trying to work. Do you want me to take a look at your screen? All right, so let's do that.